Well, baby, I'm on it with a bottle of wine and an old dirt road, and you're ready to go if you want to. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. Oklahoma's best podcast today. We are with Derek, and he is Wonderful Spirits in Oklahoma. How you doing, Derek?
I'm well. How are you, bud?
Good, good. Hey, give us a little background on you. Where'd you grow up? Talk a little bit about your family and your career.
Sure, man. Yeah. I've been all over, but I grew up in Oklahoma City, just kind of north side of Oklahoma City. Lived here my whole life. Family wise, same. I mean, a whole family's from here, all around Oklahoma as well. Wife as well, wife and kid. Now I've got a 5-year-old. But yeah, so doing that. Career wise, I've been definitely all over the place. So I started, I used to sell like very, interesting, wild medical devices for a long time, and then got a little burnt on that world and decided to try my hand at something wildly different. So I became a sales director at Yeti Coolers for several years there. So I worked for Yeti, and that was a good time. A lot of traveling and covering a big territory. And then when we decided to have a kid, didn't make sense for me to travel as much. So I actually got kind of recruited over to rebuild from a marketing and sales perspective, Anthem Brewing Company, which is a big local craft brewer in Oklahoma, one of the originals. So I took that job on, kind of rebuilt their sales program, did a full rebrand, and kind of got their marketing online, and kind of ran that for about 3 years, and then was approached by our ownership at the distillery here to kind of come and completely revamp this distillery. So that was right about 3 years ago also. And yeah, so we were the original craft distillery in the state of Oklahoma. Okay. So first one, and just celebrated 10 years in existence. The business, originally we were called Prey Wolf Spirits, which is a line we still make. But once we made the big transition to Wonderfolk, we changed over 3 years ago, and because we expanded a lot of what we make and added a lot to our repertoire, and it was kind of confusing for people for it to be called the old thing that's a brand we carry. So we kind of just revamped and made this big new opportunity where we're a house of brands. So it's like we're Wonderfolk, but we make Prey Wolf Spirits, we make Garden Society Spirits, and we make same old Moses, which is our bourbon and rye line. So that's pretty, as I guess, as in a nutshell quick as I can give you my weird journey to where I'm at now. But
no, that's perfect, and I'm sure that your family appreciates the stability of being in one place as it goes through there. Okay, great. Let's jump into Wonderfolk Spirits. 3 questions actually. Give us the origin. When did it start, and then we'll jump into more description.
Sure. Yeah. So like I mentioned, it first legal still in the state of Oklahoma, began in 2012. So that tells you how wildly backwards the world of alcohol is in Oklahoma, considering statehood happened in 1907, and you couldn't legally make anything till 2012. So we started there. We had different ownership then. Like 2 brothers, real good guys, that they were ranchers and actually just kind of went out and did a trip to Louisville and fell in love with the romance of distilling and thought, man, we could do that back home, and got all the stuff together to put a distillery without really doing a whole lot of back research on whether it was legal or not, and found out pretty quickly that it wasn't. So they had to get down and start kind of greasing some pockets and wetting some ears of the guys who are in the big domed building in Oklahoma City to try to get them to make some adjustments to the law. And they got it done. So yeah, first legal still was Prey Wolf Spirits. Fast forward up to, do you remember COVID? It was a global pandemic that briefly. It's been so long. Yeah. So COVID hit, and our current ownership had bought it right before COVID. So good timing. The cool thing was at the time, and cool, and I guess the best of a bad situation. The government was allowing, because there was a pretty high need for things like hand sanitizer and stuff like that, with the shortages that were going on. So the process of making hand sanitizer is pretty similar to making alcohol that you drink, just a little different quality and a couple different ingredients. But they allowed craft distillers to make hand sanitizer to help with the pandemic. So we got pretty aggressive with that up front, and had transferred all of our production over to making sanitizer. Ended up doing that. We got a bunch of hospital contracts. We've got some DoD contracts, and then the big one is we got the contract for the Census Bureau. If you remember, the census was being taken in 2018. So yeah, they hire about 4 million people to take the census. So we were making like, care packages of sanitizer for 4 million people, plus, taking care of our own community with hand sanitizer and whatnot. So we ended up selling about 15 million units of sanitizer in the 1 year that we made sanitizer. So again, best of a bad situation, took that money and kind of went to our investors and said, hey, if we reinvest this correctly and really kind of do the things that should have been done originally with our business, we could really make craft spirits matter in Oklahoma. And they said, go for it. So here we are 3 years later. And we're really trying to put it on the map.
Awesome. So if people walk into the distillery, 3 questions are going to help give them the experience. What are they going to see? What are they going to smell? What are they going to hear?
Sure. So the cool thing is we have 3 different places. So if you came in the actual proper distillery, you'll smell whatever we're making that day, right? So we make lots of products. We make several clear spirits. We make a lot of gin. We're really well known for several gins that we make. And then we also make bourbons and ryes. And we make a coffee liqueur. So if you catch us on a coffee day, it's a pretty eye-opening smell. So you'll see that. You'll see a small kind of ragtag team of dudes and gals that are busting tail making products. Like I said, we're small. Our whole company, top to bottom, is 14 people. So very small. Production team's 5. So you just see a bunch of folks cranking away at it, making high quality spirits in a pretty cool little facility. That's Guthrie's a neat town. It was the first state capital, so it was like everything's still Victorian in 1890. So our one side of our building was built in 1890. So that's also the side that has a different thing you could see with us, which is we have a tasting room that kind of serves as our really front of house for all things that we do, and it's called the Wander Inn, and it's a cool little bar. So we do, it's a bar. We have cocktails, small eats, music from time to time, cool events, big patio. It kind of serves as like a neat little downtown hub, and we serve what we make. So you kind of get a chance to taste what we do, both in its pure form and also in cocktails.
All right.
So that's fun. And it's cool. The whole place, we have it draped pretty much. Everything we do is really traditionally focused on the state and really the battle the state had with things like prohibition and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a mini museum. So if you look around the walls, it's cool. Everything on the walls are there's a territorial museum in Guthrie as well. That's the history prior to statehood. So I went through it all and dug up kind of everything related to anti-alcohol pushes for pre-statehood and at statehood. And so all the walls, like everything on them, are pretty much background stories about how difficult it was to be able to sit in a room that for a place that sells alcohol. So we have that. Then we also have a rick house that's very cool. That's probably people's favorite visual thing to see with the distillery. And our rick house is where we store all of our barrels. So I think people expect to go in there and see a few barrels, and they go in and there's about 500 in there. So it's a pretty awe-inspiring. You walk in the door and it's just kind of like, whoa. And that smells like pretty kick-ass whiskey all the time. So that's a hard one to beat. So those are kind of probably the 3 things you would see here, smell, all the fun of what we do in our facility.
Well, very good. Very good. Talk about your passion for this. Obviously, you have this sales background and this entrepreneurial spirit of building things and businesses, but something's got to be sustainable in this for you to keep your motivation going in this. What is that thing for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Man, I really love making things. I love starting things that are new. I love putting things on the map. I love doing things outside the box, and that's really all of what developing. I mean, we're really in the business right now of not just our own business, but trying to make an industry in Oklahoma, and not just for ourselves, but Oklahoma is a spot that, from a agricultural standpoint, with our farmers and the resources we have available in the state, it's naturally built to have a whole sustainable business built around things like taking, fantastically grown products that happen on farms all over the state and turning them into pretty killer liquids. So not just for our industry, but for also to give another outlet for our agricultural community in Oklahoma to be able to sell their wares and make money off of that. It's kind of this really cool ecosystem that builds. So for me, it's really exciting to watch an industry that was honestly fought against and candidly still is. I mean, we still live, in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and people have very interesting opinions on alcohol that can be combative for us to try to get forward and just get back to like parity with other places that do this. So it's a fun challenge, but it's one we're willing to take. It's also one too for us that we make very unique products, and that's something that I'm really excited about. I'm a lover of spirits, always have been, and I like the idea of being able to make something that isn't just the same old that's on the shelf over and over, which is where we focus. So we make very unique and interesting spirits that, lucky for us, people are really into. So that's my big driver. I mean, sure, money and all that stuff's fun, but for me, I've done lots of things that make money, and there's lots of ways to do it. For me, it's like, how do you go to work every day and leave the day feeling like, man, I really made a difference. I made something different happen. That's kind of my vibe on what gets me up.
Yeah, no, I love it. Very good. Very good. What's the best way for people to get educated on Wonderfolk Spirits and what you guys have doing there? Do you put, your website is great, but do you update more frequently on Instagram, Facebook? What's your best social media platform?
Yeah, we're pretty active across the board on. I mean, we jokingly say, we're equal parts a marketing company as we are a booze company, because that's kind of the business. So if you want to keep up to date, we're on social media every day pretty much. Probably the most, we put stuff everywhere, but sure, Instagram's probably your best spot to find us. We also, if you want a little more in-depth stuff, we do some really cool, we have a really interesting video series we do that it'll also be on social media, but you can find our YouTube is also, everything is Wonderfolk Spirits. It's WANDERFOLK, Wanderfolk, one word. And yeah, that, or like Twitter, whatever it's called now, we're WF Spirits there. But for the most part, we're pretty active. I mean, if you look us up, you'll have plenty to see. Website too is great. We keep it, but I think if you want to see day to day, social media is probably the way to go.
Perfect. Okay. Couple fun questions. You are in the hotbed of music right now. Oklahoma really is. Zach Bryan has just taken Oklahoma to a national level again, like Garth Brooks would back in the 80s and 90s. So I want to know, just from my own personal information, my own survey, my own accumulation of data, what's the best concert you've ever seen, Derek?
That's a good one, man. I played music my whole life. So I've definitely, it's a huge part of my life too. Best concert I've ever seen, I can tell you, I saw, I'm not much of a country guy, so mine's going to go a different direction, but I saw Arcade Fire, but I saw them at the Green Door, or what was called, which is a very, very, very small club on Western. I mean, it's like, we're talking maybe 200 people, but I saw them on their first tour when they were actually opening for a band, and it was pretty mind-blowing to be a band like that. And then fast forward about a month, and they became, super famous, and now they're like, indie darlings. And now they're old, but yeah, it was pretty wild. So that still is. I mean, I think for musically it was insane, but also just knowing now what it was and seeing them where they began, to be in that room was pretty damn nutty.
Yeah, for sure. So dead or alive, you could see one musical act. Who do you want to see?
Man, I've seen a lot of my heroes. I think someone I never got to see that I'm a big fan of is I love David Bowie, always have. So I would have loved to have seen David Bowie a lot. I would have loved to see also, I mean, I'm a weirdo, but I would have loved to see in their actual full form. I love Steely Dan. I would have loved to have seen like proper Steely Dan, like Asia era Steely Dan. Right. Yeah, I mean, Beatles would be okay. That wouldn't be bad. I think, seeing Bonham and Zeppelin would have been fun. But as a drummer that, you can see where I'm gravitating towards. But yeah, I think probably if I had to say one, I'd say, man, Bowie's a big influence for me. So
Very cool. Very cool. Derek, you got your hands full down there, but you're doing really, really well. Guys,
Thanks,
check
man.
him out on Instagram and the website. Derek, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, baby,